This is a still frame from my film, The Shame of Point Reyes. You've got to pay attention very closely to notice this frame because I'm swapping through a bunch of the different signs in the seashore, and this just appears on the screen very briefly, but it does show D Ranch, and indeed, it looks overgrown with weeds. Why do people think that that's different than the other ranches? In 2018, 2019, when I made the original of The Shame of Point Reyes, I didn't know much about plants. But by the time I shot this footage in 2021 over by McClure and Kehoe, I knew that none of these plants were native. This land was actively being used by ranchers. This is the reality of ranch land. It promotes weeds. This idea that weeds arrive once the ranchers leave is false. And they don't just accidentally promote the weeds, such as the milk thistle you just saw, they intentionally promote weeds, such as these silage field plants. Silage fields are a nightmare in themselves, but we'll come back to that. Let's go talk about the D Ranch plants again. First, let's establish what plants we're looking at. These are annuals from Europe. These grow fast, they grow tall, and then they die off. And that's what happens every single year. I see some velvet grass in there. I see slender oats in there. I see quaking oat grass in there. I see some of the silage field plants in there, poison hemlock, thistles. None of it is good. None of it is supposed to even be on this continent, much less in a national seashore. And the Park Service, despite all these years and all this opportunity to restore this to natural habitat, just allows this to continue to happen. Now, at other ranches, sometimes this gets grazed down, sometimes it gets mowed down. When I say mowed down, sometimes it's just for the sake of making it shorter, and they aren't nice enough to pick it up, and the weeds get spread through the wind, and the fire fuel remains, and yet they are the first to promote the idea that, oh, we have to have cattle to fight the fire fuel. Sometimes this is mowed by machines that are going to later harvest this to be later feed for the cattle instead of grazed while the plants are still standing. The ongoing theme is that maintenance is required in some form, and that is required because ranchers themselves are promoting a problem. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Hey, these plants that are caused by us and promoted by us also need to be maintained by us, and that's why we have to be here. Just forget the sensible conclusion that if we go away, the problem will go away. And yes, the problem will go away a lot faster if we actually step in and help the problem go away. But what I'm getting at is if you look at the unranched areas of the seashore, if you look at nature, if you look at the perennial plants, you don't have this problem of out of control weeds. So who's maintaining it? Well, nature's maintaining it. That's the beauty of getting out of the way of nature. This idea that there's a problem if we humans aren't there doing something is vain and stupid. Consider some of the things that do not exist in the Tule Elk Reserve but do exist on ranchland. Irrigation. There's a pretty big one. Hey, how are all of these green plants surviving out there without irrigation and without fertilizing? Sometimes it kind of looks the same when it comes to the ranchers because their sprinklers are actually spraying out liquid poop. So you tell me, is that is that irrigation or fertilization or poisoning of the land? It's really amazing that we have reached the point where we celebrate people who use giant sprinklers to shoot feces all over a national seashore. I made a video not too long ago praising the progress that has taken place in the Presidio of San Francisco. And someone felt the need to comment that, well, that didn't happen by itself. there all this work took place. Well, indeed, work takes place at some point in time in order to undo the damage that was done. The really inspiring part is that once you do that, nature takes care of itself. All over California, the places that I've visited, for the most part, you have these urban landscaping strategies that make no sense at all. They aren't using native plants, they're using stuff that you just find at Home Depot. I mean, that's the extent of the intelligence being put behind what's being chosen. And therefore, you then also have to install all this irrigation and you have to use all this water, which we have a limited supply of, just to keep these plants alive, only to turn around and always chop these plants up because humans decide they need to look a certain way. Now, in the Presidio, that's not the case. There's no irrigation, there's no water use, and you don't need to go around constantly chopping plants up. They found homeostasis with each other. I find the urban landscaping strategy stupid on a similar level of supporting ranching. It is a destructive cycle, a battle that is unwinnable. You're causing the weeds to come in. In fact, you're fertilizing the weeds, reseeding the weeds, irrigating the weeds, and then saying, oh man, what are we going to do about the weeds? The answer from my personal experience is that you put forth the initial effort to uproot them, but you don't get to just walk away because these plants got the name invasive for a reason. They're going to take over territory. They are survivors. They are prolific seed producers. They're not going to go away just because you did something about it once. You made a little bit of an effort once. You've got to incorporate your allies, the native plants. You've got to put them in the ground because we're talking about territory. If the native plant is using up that territory, then that territory is no longer available to the problem plants. The news just gets better because these are self-sustaining plants. You get them through the establishment stage, and then you don't have to do anything. And guess what? The wildlife appreciate it too. You're not wasting resources anymore, and you're helping the planet. It's a no-brainer, and it's a no-brainer that the people at Point Reyes National Seashore won't even get behind. When the people who should know better don't know better, or even worse, do know better and willfully do the wrong thing, you really need to open your eyes and take a look at who's running the show and what their motivation is.